Well, good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. If we think about it, we actually only have a few more days of, it sounds weird, but we only have a few more days of school this in 2020. We've got tomorrow together, and then we just got 4 days next week, and then you guys are on to 2021. So it's crazy. But so directions, get out materials for class, work on the following problem by finding the slope. So I wanted to kind of integrate this into our discussion today, just because I put some problems like this in our practice finding slope assignment from last week, and a lot of people missed it or weren't sure what to do. So I wanted to make sure that we understood what we were looking at. So when we're looking at a table, especially when it's labeled like this with our X and Y values, hold on, let me get my marker. So especially whenever we've got our X and our Y values, sorry, I'm just letting people in and taking attendance. What was I gonna say? Oh, so it's labeled as X and Y. So we write points. So when we write coordinate, like points on a coordinate plane, we write them as X comma Y. So for this one, we've just got -3, 1 for this first point. And then for this next one, we've got -5, 5. And so on and so forth. The next one will be -9, 13, -12, 19, etc. So it looks confusing at first for some of us, but all it is just taking 2 points from that table and using the format that we know how to use, finding the change in Y divided by the change in X. So remember the our slope formula, y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So for this one, so I'll just make this point number 2, this point number 1. And remember, we've got x, y, x, y. So we're going to do the same thing like we normally do. I'm going to take my y2 value, so 1, minus my y1 value. So I'm going to take 1 minus 5. And then I'm going to take my x2 value minus my x1 value. So I'm going to take -3 minus a -5. So when I set it up like that, go ahead and put that in your calculator and calculate our slope. So remember, we're just doing 1 minus 5 on the top, and then -3 minus a -5 on the bottom. Go ahead and do that. Once you get that, go ahead and enter it in the chat. All right, so I'm seeing one response. If you have, and all I'm asking you guys to do right now is just put it in your calculator. So 1 minus 5 is going to give us -4. And then -3 minus a negative. Remember, when we subtract a negative, it's going to be the same thing as adding. So -3 minus a -5 is just -3 plus 5, which gives us a +2. So Maya, good job. Anybody else who got -4/2? Which is awesome. You can also simplify that. -4 divided by 2 gives us -2. So -2 can be our slope, or -4 divided by 2 can be our slope. So that's how we calculate slope from a table. So and we're gonna kind of bring this into the conversation later. I just kind of wanted to bring that to your attention, that when we see a table, it's just a bunch of points on a coordinate grid. So just keep that in mind as we're rolling through this. All right, so this week, finding B, we've been discussing how to find that y-intercept when we don't know it, or it's not given to us, and then how to understand that, how that incorporates back into the y equals mx plus b formula. And then we've been working on graphing. So I know I've been doing it every day, but I'm going to be annoying about it until everybody understands that when we talk about y equals mx plus b, m is your slope, B is your y-intercept. This x and this y, they represent any point on your line. That's why they're variables. So typically when we would see a y equals mx plus b format, we would have a number here and a number here, and these would be left as x and y. That's where you would plug in if you had a point that was 2, 1, you would plug those values in, and that equation that we come up with represents that line and any point that falls on that line. That's what that y and that x represent. So just keep that in mind. What is the y-intercept? Again, just wanted to reiterate because this is people still seem to be struggling a little bit. Y-intercept is going to be the point on the y where our line crosses or touches the y-axis. All right, so we are going to be working on finding B again today, just because it will probably appear on the air test just to be able to come up with an equation yourself. So this is going to be a challenge for some people. So I wanted to spend almost a full week focusing on this skill because it is important, and it does also review our algebra stuff that we talked about. And then next week we're going to finish with writing equations from graphs and tables, and then we'll do some review, and then you guys will take your test. And based on how that test goes, we'll guide kind of if we're going to move forward, or if a lot of people do really poorly on that test, then we're going to continue to do slope after break. But hopefully the test goes well. It's just going to be, can you find slope? Do you understand what this means? And I would say if you have been attending class, doing your work, asking questions when you have them, then you should be just fine. But those of you who come to a meeting here or there, or don't do your work, or aren't asking questions when you need help, that's where we start struggling. And I know it's a little bit different because we're communicating between like a screen, but I'm still your teacher. I'm still here to help you. So if you do need anything, make sure you're letting me know. But just keeping that on your radar that you will be having a test coming up soon. All right, so this says, how do we find B? Same concept. So how do we find B in this? So remember, these on a table, these are really just points on a graph. So we want to go ahead, and step one says find the slope. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to focus on these 2 points right here. You can choose any 2 points on this in this table. I'm just going to focus on the first 2 because those are the first ones there. It's easy peasy just to pick those. So I'm going to do the change or difference in my y values divided by the change or difference in my x values. So what I mean by that is, remember, we've got I'll make this point 2 and this 0.1. So remember, if we're taking y2 minus y1, it's going to be 1 minus a -7 divided by, remember, to find the slope or to find the rate of change, we're going to take the change in y divided by the change in x, so -8 minus 0. So what is my slope going to be then if we simplify this? And you guys can plug this into your calculator. What is my slope going to be? All right, guys, so all we have to do is plug this into our calculator. We've got 1 minus a -7. Well, remember, 1 minus -7 is the same thing as 1 plus 7. Well, 1 plus 7 just gives me 8. And then we've got -8 minus 0. Well, that simplifies to -8. So my slope is going to be 8 divided by negative 8. What is that simplified? I need some participation from you guys. Thank you, Maya. So we're going to have our slope, or m, is going to be 8 divided by negative 8, which just gives us negative 1. So our slope is going to be negative 1. So we're going to plug this into our slope-intercept formula. So remember, our slope-intercept formula is going to be y equals mx plus b. But since we found our slope already, we're going to go ahead and replace this m with what we found. So we found negative 1 is our slope. So next it says use a point in x comma y format and substitute them into your slope-intercept formula. So we want to go ahead and find b by, we're going to pick one of our points from the graph. So you could choose, there's 4 options. We've got this option, we've got this option, and this option. So I'm just going to pick a random one that I feel like picking. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to pick 3 comma negative 10. So remember, that's written in x comma y format. So our x value, so I'm going to take it out so we can kind of see it a little bit better. So I'm taking 3 comma negative 10 out of the table. I'm going to replace, let me get my highlighter back out. I'm going to replace x with 3, and I'm going to replace negative y with negative 10 because that's an x value. Because remember, this is x, this is y. I must be tired today. You guys aren't participating much except for Maya. All right, so I'm going to plug in negative 10 for y equals negative 1 times, and then remember I'm plugging in 3 for x plus b. So we've got, I'm going to draw my line down the middle. This goes back to our algebra unit. I say this every time. Can't do anything with that negative 10 yet, so I'm going to go ahead and just bring it down, because over here, if I simplify, I get negative 1 times 3, which gives me negative 3 plus b. So then if I'm looking at this, remember, I want to get b by itself. I want to solve for b. So if I've got a constant on either side of the equal sign and I've got my variable by itself already, I just want to go ahead and get all constants to one side of the equal sign. Since I've already got b on the right side by itself, I want to move all of my constants over to the left. So to move a negative 3, I'm going to add it. So the opposite of a negative 3 is a positive 3. So I'm going to add 3 to both sides, because negative 3 and positive 3 cancel. And whatever you do to one side, you've got to do to the other side. So I've got negative 10 plus 3. That's going to get us negative 7 equals b. Because remember, I'm just bringing down my remaining variable. So I solved for b. Step 4, plug b into your final equation. So I've got y equals m. Our m that we found was negative 1 x, so y equals mx plus b. Well, my b is actually negative 7. So instead of being a positive, it's going to be negative 7. So we're going to have y equals negative 1x minus 7. That's going to be our equation for this table. All right. I know there's a lot going on. If you're staying with me and asking questions when you have questions, then you should be fine. If you have questions, you can always message them privately to me and I will answer them. Just make sure that you got, because I will be upset if by the time you guys take your test, I'll be upset if you guys just haven't asked me any questions or asked for help at all. And be like, oh, well, I was lost the whole time. No, don't do that. All right, so next, same thing. I know it seems repetitive, but we need to make sure we're practicing this as much as possible so that we understand the connections being made. So we've got a table, we've got x's and y's. We want to figure out what the slope of this line is. So you can pick any 2 points on your line. Remember, this is just X comma Y format. So these are all points on a coordinate plane. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight. Before I highlight, I want to find my slope. So I'm going to go ahead and pick any 2 points from this line. I'm just going to go ahead and pick my first 2. So I want to find my change in Y. So I want to take my change in Y divided by my change in X. Remember, that's how we find slope. We take the change in Y divided by the change in X. So I'm going to take, so I'll make this, let's see, I'll make this 0.2 and this point number 1. So my Y2 is going to be 33. And if you guys aren't sure where I'm getting this, I'll write this down here. Y2 minus Y1 divided by X2 minus X1. This is how you find slope. So I'm taking 2 points. One of them, this top one is point number 2. This one is point number 1. I'm taking my Y value of my second point. So Y2 is 33 minus Y1, which gives me 24, divided by X2, which is -9, minus X1, which is a -6. All right, so go ahead and simplify that and let me know what it is in the chat. So what is our slope if we're using this information? So I see one guess. So go ahead and make sure that we're entering our guesses or our whatever you guys are getting for slope into the chat. And again, you shouldn't feel good or not good. You should feel good, but you shouldn't feel bad if you get it wrong. If you get it wrong, it's okay. So I'm seeing 2 that say -9/3. The whole purpose of this is so that I can see what you guys are getting at home so that I can try and help you and kind of help you guys understand a little bit better. All right, so 33 minus 24 is going to give us a +9. And then we've got -9 minus a -6. Remember, whenever we've got minus and negative, it's the same thing as adding. So -9 minus a -6 or +6 is going to give me a -3. So those of you who said -9/3, awesome job. That's going to be our slope. Now, we can actually simplify this. We can take 9 divided by -3, and we'll get -3. So our slope simplified is going to be -3. But those of you who said -9/3, awesome job. That's perfect. So our M, or our slope, is going to be -3. I'll just make sure we know that's negative. I'm going to go ahead and erase that. All right, so we've got our slope. So step 1, find slope. Plug the slope into the slope-intercept formula. Y equals mx plus b. If you don't know what the slope-intercept formula is right now, you should definitely make sure you have it written down somewhere, because we use it all the time. Y equals mx plus b. Next, we're going to go ahead and substitute m, because remember, m is our slope. Why did the math gods make m represent slope? I don't know, but we're going to roll with it. And I don't want that to be, hold on one second. That looks like it's like a minus. All right, so we've got -3 in there. So next, step 2, use a point x comma y and substitute them into your slope-intercept formula. So we're going to pick a point from a graph or from the table. You can use any point on this table. So we're going to go ahead and I'm just gonna go ahead and pick this one because why not? Because we can use any point on this table. So I'm gonna pick 5, 9. So 5, -9. So remember, we write these as X, Y format. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna sub in 5 for X, and I'm gonna sub in -9 for Y. So I'm gonna go ahead and write this. So -9 is going in for Y. And then 5 is going in for X. So -3, and then we're gonna replace X with 5. And then I'm gonna bring down my plus B. All right, so now this leaves us with our only missing variable is a B. So we're gonna be able to solve for B at this point. So I've got -9 on one side. That's just gonna come straight down. I can't really do anything with it yet. If we've got -3 and next to 5, whenever a number is directly next to a number like this, so whenever we've got -3 right up next to X, that's -3 times X. So when I replace that X with this 5, it's just saying, okay, I'm gonna multiply -3 times whatever is in there for X. So -3 times 5 is gonna give us -15. Good job, Namaya. And then we're gonna go ahead and bring down my plus B. Now, this is where our algebra skills come in. Remember, we've got constants on either side. So remember, constant terms are those terms that do not have a variable in them. Variable terms are the terms that have the letter or the missing value or the or B in them in this case. So we want to make sure all of our constants get moved to one side. So I'm going to move -15 over to the other side by doing the opposite of a -15. Well, the opposite of a negative is a positive. So I'm going to go ahead and move that by adding 15 to both sides, because whatever we do to one side, we've got to do to the other to keep the equation balanced. So that's going to cancel. I'm going to be left with -9 plus 15, which is going to give me 6. Good, Namaya. I'm going to bring down my B. So I'm going to be left with, so now all that's left is step 4. We solve for B, plug B into your final equation. So I want you guys to enter into the chat, what's our equation then? If we're writing it in y equals mx plus b format, what's our equation going to be? Because that's the whole point of this, is to understand how to use the information that we found. Good, guys. So I keep almost writing on the screen with my pen. All right, good. So remember, we're going to replace m with what we found for m. So we're going to have y equals -3x. And then for b, we found 6. So for b, we're just going to have plus 6. So our final equation from this table is going to be y equals -3x plus 6. And then I know it sounds repetitive, but I want you to type in the chat. If you don't understand the whole equation thing still, you should at least know what's the slope and what's the y-intercept. So I want you to type in the chat what number in that equation is the y-intercept, what number in that equation is the slope. So I want you to type that in the chat right now, because you should be able to do that. Like a little mini quiz. There's only been 3 people to participate in the chat today. So those 3 people are definitely getting some PBIS points. Good, guys. So -3 is going to be our slope. Remember, if there's a negative in front, that is attached to the 3. So that's going to be a -3 is our slope. And then 6 is our y-intercept. We're going to practice more next week on, once we get these equations, how do we reproduce that on a graph? We've seen it before, but I'll try and find some tools online so that we can practice together and kind of look at graphing, because one of the biggest part of this unit is the graphing aspect. And if you guys don't have graphing paper at home, it's kind of difficult. So I'm trying to like show you guys what you should be doing, but it's better when you guys get to practice yourself. So I'm going to try and find some stuff for us. We're going to go to this one because I was going to go to, we're going to finish with a word problem though, since we did tables twice. All right, Miss Brunger's on a hike. She hikes 4 miles in 1 hour and 12 miles in 3 hours. Find the slope and write an equation for this situation. All right, so if we remember anything from our non-proportional stories, we should know that when in a story problem, when they give us something like this, they want us to find the rate of change or the slope. So in 1 hour, she hikes 4 miles. In 3 hours, she hikes 12 miles. That's what we can gather from that. And all I did was I just made one of them my X, one of them my Y. So miles is going to be my Y, and then hours is going to be my X if I was going to graph this. But I just took those out and created points. So now we should be able to find the slope because we know how to find the slope when we're given 2 points. Remember, we take Y2 minus Y1 divided by X2 minus X1. So I'll make this 0.2 and this 0.1. So if I'm going to take my Y value, because remember we write them as X comma Y, our Y value in point number 2 is 4. So I'm doing this part right here. So we're going to do 4 minus Y1. So our Y value in number 1 divided by X2, which is our X value in point number 2, minus X1, which is going to be 3. So then 4 minus 12 sorry, I just got a private message from somebody. I just wanted to make sure I was reading it. So if we've got 4 minus 12, that's going to give us -8. 1 minus 3 is -2. So we've got -8 over -2. I know it's kind of hard to see, so I'm going to erase this chunk in the middle. What's -8 divided by -2? Because we've got that line in there. Whoops, what did I do? So right now our slope is, our M is -8 over -2. We can simplify that though. If we type that into our calculator, -8 divided by -2 is going to give us a +4. So in your calculator, you should type in -8 divided by -2, and we get a +4. Good. So our slope, I'm going to go ahead and erase this as well, just because we want some space. So our slope that we found, so M is +4. So now, since we found the slope, we're going to use one of our points. So we're going to go ahead and do Y equals M. M is 4, remember, we found our slope, X plus B. So since we have our points, I'm just going to choose one of our points. I'm going to go ahead and pick our first point. So I'm going to sub in, let me get my highlighter out. I'm going to sub in 4 for Y, and I'm going to sub in 1 for X. And remember, because they're written in X comma Y format. All right, so I'm going to rewrite this. I'm going to write 4 in for Y equals 4 times X, but instead of X, I'm going to write 1 plus B. All right, so we're going to go ahead and solve this then. So I'm going to bring down my 4. 4 times 1 gives us 4. I'm gonna bring down my plus b. So right now I've got 4 equals 4 plus b. Well, I wanna get, this is, some of you guys might be, if you're thinking ahead, you're probably kind of like, this is a little bit weird. We're gonna go ahead and move this 4 to the other side because we wanna get all of our constants to one side. So I'm gonna go ahead and subtract 4 from both sides because 4 minus 4 cancels and I want b to be by itself, isolated. Well, 4 minus 4 is just 0. And then I'm bringing down b, so b equals 0. How did that happen? Well, I'll explain it to you. But for right now, I want you guys to write an equation. So remember, we've got y equals mx plus b. I want you guys to write an equation using what we found. All you have to do is plug in that m and plug in the b. So I'm noticing some people are putting 8 over 2x. Yes, that's fine, but since we simplified our slope to be 4, I would prefer you guys use 4. But I love that you guys put in y equals 8 over 2x though with nothing for b, because what this represents is, and if we think about me hiking on a graph, so if we have, you know, our x-axis, our y-axis, if we were to actually graph this, if our b is at 0, that means it's a proportional graph. So if I'm hiking 4 miles in 1 hour, that's my unit rate. That's a proportional relationship. And then I'm hiking 12 miles in 3 hours. So I'm not starting at a weird place. I've just got, so I'm gonna go ahead and, so what I'm trying to explain is, since we don't have a b, since we don't have a y-intercept, it's a proportional relationship. So my equation is going to be y equals 4x. And what this means is for every hour that I hike 4 miles. So in 1 mile or 1 hour, I hike 4 miles. 2 hours, I hike 8 miles, that type of thing. So I just want you guys to start making these connections. Tomorrow, I'm going to try and, you know, last week I enjoyed playing a Kahoot with everybody, so I'm gonna try and plan something more fun tomorrow. We might do a little bit of work and then do a Kahoot at the end or something. I haven't decided yet, but I'm gonna go ahead and leave it for questions now. And then if you don't have any questions, you guys